Ryzen 9800X3D is finally here. It's the best gaming CPU in 2024, especially for those using an ultra-fast graphics card. Welcome back to PC Builder, I'm Jason. This video covers everything that you need to know for the best Ryzen 9800X3D gaming PC build in 2024, including the best GPU for the Ryzen 9800X3D, the best RAM for Ryzen 9800X3D, best motherboard for Ryzen 9800X3D, and more. And we'll give you specific build templates for both a mid-range and premium Ryzen 9800X3D gaming PC build. Remember, if you get value out of this video, please give it a like. This makes a huge difference to the channel, and of course subscribe for more cool PC content. With that, let's jump into it. So what's the best graphics card for the Ryzen 9800X3D? Remember that we get the most FPS in a gaming PC build when we get the fastest GPU that we can afford, then just get a CPU that won't bottleneck it. You will often get more FPS with the same budget by going with a lower end CPU if the cost difference will allow you to move up to the next tier of GPU and that CPU again is not bottlenecking it. But as we get to the high end of GPU performance, the CPU really does start to matter, especially at lower resolutions. The Ryzen 9800X3D has an MSRP of $479. I'll leave it linked in the video description so you can check current pricing in your region. Meanwhile, the Ryzen 7600 is currently $190 and the 9600X is $240. That's a big difference that could be invested in your graphics card if your budget is tight. That's why I recommend a minimum GPU of at least a Radeon RX 7900 GRE or RTX 4070 Super, both selling at over $500 at the time of filming. Otherwise, I would drop down my CPU and use the extra money on my GPU. From there, the bigger the GPU we pair with our Ryzen 9800X3D, the better. And it increases in value as we get GPUs like the Radeon RX 7900 XTX, RTX 4080 Super, and the current king of GPUs in the RTX 4090. We went with the ASUS TUF Gaming RTX 4090 OC in our build, though with 4090 production ending, these might be harder to track down in the near future. Of course, there's no graphics card limit with the Ryzen 9800X3D, and it will be the CPU of choice for those waiting for next generation graphics cards like the RTX 5090. What's the best RAM for the Ryzen 9800X3D? Let's start with the speed. Remember that all RAM in the DIY PC building space, it's meant to be overclocked, either manually or through the use of a one-click auto overclocking profile like XMP or AMD's EXPO, which you enable in the BIOS. I'll leave our best RAM for gaming 2024 video linked down in the video description if you need a refresher of how RAM works on the desktop. With both the Ryzen 9000 and 7000 series CPUs, including the 7800X3D, we found that DDR5 6000 CL30 RAM was a sweet spot, with 6000 speed being kind of a speed limit that we did not want to exceed. This is because we want our RAM clock speed to match our CPU memory controller speed, and we want the Infinity Fabric to run at about 2000 MHz. AMD sent over a new Trident Z5 Neo DDR5 6000 CL28 kit that's slightly tighter cast latency. So we tested two kits and threw in a DDR5 8000 CL38 kit as well, running at a 2:1 ratio with the Infinity Fabric at 2100 MHz. Here's the GeoMean data of Watchdog Legions, Horizon Zero Dawn, Cyberpunk 2077, and Homeworld 3 at 1080p at the second highest quality settings with no upscaling or ray tracing on an RTX 4090. And we see that DDR5 6000 CL30 and CL28 seem to perform equally with DDR5 8000 CL38 within the margin of error. Right now, 2-stick kits of DDR5 6000 CL30 and 32 gigabytes of total capacity goes for as little as $85 without RGB, while kits like this Team Group T-Force Delta RGB kit go for between $95 and $105. Kits like the Trident Z5 Neo DDR5 6000 CL28 with slightly tighter timings go for between $120 and $130 right now, but there's only a handful of them available. Meanwhile, I bought this T-Force Delta RGB DDR5 8000 CL38 kit for $185. To me, the answer is simple. Get a DDR5 6000 CL30 kit for your Ryzen 9800X3D and invest extra money somewhere else, like your GPU, your cooler, motherboard, storage, PSU, or your PC case. I'll leave these kits and a couple other good ones linked down in the video description. How much RAM do you need for gaming in 2024? Well, I'm now recommending 32 gigabytes total, as some newer titles will micro stutter with only 16 gigabytes of RAM. This is also a great amount for any video editing, streaming, or non-gaming workload that you might do. And remember, we want a 2-stick kit. Odd numbers of sticks are bad for gaming performance, and 4 sticks is just too hard on the memory controller for the Ryzen 7000 and 9000 CPUs. Finally, we have both XMP and AMD EXPO RAM kits available, and I'm happy to say that every motherboard that I've seen for AM5 can use either one, so don't worry about which one you get. Just remember to go into the BIOS and turn on the XMP or EXPO profile to make sure your RAM is running at the full rated speed, something we go over in our How to Set Up a PC guide. And if you need more help with RAM, check out our best RAM for gaming video, link down in the video description. So what's the best motherboard for the Ryzen 9800X3D in 2024? The great news is that the Ryzen 9800X3D will work with any AMD AM5 motherboard with a BIOS update that includes a GISA 1.2.0.2a or later. And yes, you will need to update the BIOS on virtually any motherboard in 2024 in order to get your Ryzen 9800X3D to post. We go through how to use the BIOS flashback feature that's available on virtually every AM5 motherboard that I've seen in our How to Build a PC video, so check that out for a step-by-step guide. But with X870, X870E, B650, B650E, X670, X670E, A620, and upcoming B850 and B840 motherboards, what chipset should you get? First, eliminate the garbage tier B840 and A620 boards, which do not allow overclocking. Not even Precision Boost Overdrive, because we want to enable PBO in the BIOS. You also don't need X-Series motherboards like the Asus X870E Crosshair Hero that AMD sent over to us pre-configured for our testing. Big thank you to AMD and Asus. It's an insane motherboard, but at $700, the price is also quite insane. And the X-Series chipset on AM5 really only offers extra M.2 SSD slots that most gamers just don't need. Instead, I recommend that most gamers grab a B-Series motherboard, either a B650 or B650E motherboard, or the upcoming B850 motherboards. As I'm filming this, it does appear that the motherboard companies are trying to close out the B650 and X670 motherboards, so you might find a deal, or things might even sell out. So check out the links in the video description, which I'll keep updated. Here's my top picks, starting in the more value-focused mid-range motherboards. So these are micro ATX boards, around $120 to $150. I like the MSI Pro B650M-A Wi-Fi, as it has a decent amount of rear USB ports, 2 M.2 slots, and a really solid VRM, though it only rocks a more entry-level audio solution. Alternatively, I also like the ASRock B650M ProRS and ProRS Wi-Fi, which are very similar, except that they trade out some of the higher speed USB connections for an additional M.2 slot running at half bandwidth, and they come in a nice looking silver white look. For those of you wanting a full-size ATX board, the MSI B650 Gaming Wi-Fi is basically the full-size version of the MSI Pro Micro ATX board for $169, and the Gigabyte Eagle AX has a very similar feature set, including an additional M.2 socket for $159. Note that in our recent 7800X3D build, we used the MSI Project Zero motherboard with cable connections on the back of the motherboard for a really clean look inside of a compatible case. So if you're interested in that, check out the full build guide linked down in the video description. If you want more premium motherboards, after all, we're talking about the currently fastest gaming CPU out there. So spending a little extra on our motherboard, it's not a bad idea, especially if we have the budget. There are plenty of great options out there. In particular, I like the MSI B650 Tomahawk, right around $190 US, which has a great range of USB, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 3 M.2 slots, upgraded ALC 4080 audio, and comes in a nice matte black finish. If you're looking for the white version of this board, that's basically the MSI B650 Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. Other picks include the Asus Tough Gaming B650 Plus. Avoid the Dash E version, as it's just a budget motherboard with different styling for almost the same amount of money. The Tough B650 Plus has an improved ALC 1200 audio, 3 M.2 slots, a decent rear I/O, and nice black styling. If you don't care about motherboard audio and you just want tons of USB connections, the AORS B650 Elite AXV2 is a great board. And of course, if you want tons of features and are prepared to pay the price, the Asus ROG Strix B650-A is a nice white alternative that sometimes goes on sale for $200. I am seeing some crazy sales right now on the X670E Tomahawk for just $225, so again, check those links in the description, which I'll keep updated. For even more picks like all-white motherboards or other ITX options, check out our best Ryzen motherboard 2024 video. Now let's talk about the best CPU cooler for the Ryzen 9800X3D. With its additional thermal headroom, which can help push higher CPU clock speeds, even if we just turn on Precision Boost Overdrive in the BIOS, I think investing just a little bit more in our cooler does make sense, both to slightly improve performance, but also reduce overall system noise. While the CPU has a TJ max of 95 degrees Celsius, in gaming we often don't come anywhere near that. At the more budget end, I would recommend any mid-range air cooler, like the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE or Phantom Spirit 120 SE, or similar style cooler that either has a large single tower or dual tower cooler. I'd skip the more budget single tower coolers as mid-range air coolers are just so cheap these days and way more performance. Of course, if you want to take the build aesthetics to the next level, just about any 240mm all-in-one liquid cooler is sufficient, and 360mm coolers are pretty much massive overkill, but since we're talking about the highest end builds, feel free to go 360 if that gives you a better aesthetic in your PC build. In particular, I like the Thermalright Aqua Elite V3 Liquid AIO cooler. We used the 360mm version on our recent 9600X build guide. They have gone up in price a little bit. You can still find the white ones for under $60. The black ones are more like $75. In our build, we went with maximum performance with the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 RGB 360mm AIO. I'll be the first to say this is total overkill, but it's only $110 for the white RGB ones. You can of course get both these coolers in black and Arctic in the non-RGB version as well. My only issue with the Arctic is that every time I struggle to get the pump head screws seated, and I feel like it requires an unreasonable amount of downward pressure to do so. But once you get it on, it looks amazing. I've linked everything down in the video description along with some alternatives for you to check out. So what's the best SSD for the Ryzen 9800X3D? If you haven't had a chance to check out our best SSD for gaming 2024 video, I'll leave it linked down in the video description for a deeper dive. But in a nutshell, there's no gaming benefit from using anything faster than even a SATA SSD, though PCIe Gen 3 and Gen 4 NVMe SSDs are now the best price to performance options. And skip the expensive Gen 5 M.2 SSDs as they're just still a total waste of money. AMD sent us over the Samsung 990 Pro 1TB drive that was pre-configured for our testing, but I just want to be clear, this drive is massive overkill for a gaming PC. For more budget 9800X3D builds, I'd recommend just grabbing a cheaper Gen 3 or Gen 4 NVMe with a good SLC cache or host memory buffer process like the Silicon Power A60 or UD90, Team Group G50, or Crucial P3. For more premium builds looking to add a DRAM cache to make their SSD a little snappier while doing things like file copies and game installs, consider grabbing a drive like the Cardea Z440 for about $70, Team Group G70 Pro for $75, or SK Hynix P31 for $75. In particular, for a number of drives, 4TB versions are actually the best price per terabyte. And this isn't 2015 anymore, so you do not need a separate drive for your operating system. It's absolutely fine to have a single large capacity drive, especially if that saves you money. I'll leave several drives linked down in the video description. For the PC case, what we want here is good airflow. And since this is likely a higher end build, we want it to look amazing too. While there are some good micro ATX options out there like the Okonos Aqua 3 or maybe the Bitphoenix Nova Mesh for just $59, since we're going to use a high-end GPU, the GPU length might become an issue. I'd recommend an ATX size case, and good budget options in either black or white with ARGB fans can be had for as little as about $63, like the Montech XR ATX case with 3 included ARGB fans in black or white. If you want a more traditional front intake ATX case, the Phanteks XT Ultra for $79, very solid, and supports rear connector motherboards like MSI's Project Zero. We went with my favorite airflow case, the Lee & Lee Landcool 216 in white, also comes in black as well. I love building in this PC case as the top comes completely off, making AIO installation a breeze, and for a super premium ATX case, it's just $95. So the Lee & Lee Landcool 216, it's the best building experience that I've ever had and has excellent airflow with its dual 160mm fans. The included 140mm fan in the back is non-RGB, so feel free to replace it if you want. We have a whole list of great PC cases in our best PC case 2024 video, which is linked in our How to Build a PC playlist in the video description. Finally, let's talk about PSUs. If you haven't seen our How to Buy a PSU 2024 guide, we cover how to size and buy the best unit for your build based on unit quality rather than the nonsensical 80+ ratings. I'll leave that link below. For a build like this, given the high-end GPUs that we're considering for it, as well as the fact that many want to consider future drop-in CPU upgrades, I'd recommend getting at least a B tier or better PSU as rated on the PSU cultist list, and sizing it at least 1.5 times the max rated draw in PC Part Picker. And if you're going to drop in an RX 7900 XTX, RTX 4080 Super, or RTX 4090, then definitely grab an A tier rated PSU. We ended up using the Be Quiet 12M 1200 watt PSU. It's a great unit with sleeved cables, it's PCIe 5.0 and ATX 3.1, so it has the updated 12 volt high power 2x6 cable connection for NVIDIA GPUs. And at $160, it's one of the cheaper 1200 watt units and still A tier rated. So how much is your Ryzen 9800X3D gaming PC build gonna cost? Well, I put together two build templates to get you started. The first is a mid-range value-focused build that uses the Ryzen 9800X3D at its $479 MSRP with a mid-range air cooler, mid-range ATX-sized motherboard, DDR5 6000CL30 non-RGB RAM, a 2TB budget NVMe SSD, heavily discounted RX 7900 XT 20GB GPU at just $639, a Montech XR value-focused but great-looking PC case, and an A-tier rated 850-watt PSU on the PSU cultist list. That build comes in at just below $1,700 US, and it could be done a bit cheaper if needed. For a more premium build that doesn't stray too far from value, I've dropped in a currently $1,000 RTX 4080 Super, switched the cooler to the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 ARGB 360mm AIO, upgraded the motherboard to a more premium model for $200, gone with RGB on the RAM at the same speed, upgraded the NVMe SSD to one with DRAM at Gen 4 speed, gone with the Lianli LAN-cooled 216 case in black RGB, and the same 850-watt A-tier rated PSU, all for just about $2,200. Obviously, if you want, you can spend more, especially when two graphics cards come out in early 2025. And I'm looking at you, RTX 5090, but those templates should get you started, and I'll leave both of them linked down in the video description for you to check out. Remember to check everything linked down in the video description for current pricing and availability in your region, and our How to Build a PC playlist, including our guide on how to build a PC and set up your PC after you build. If you got value out of this video, please give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. And we'll catch you on the next one.